This story goes by the title, My Kids Cut Me Off After My Divorce. They took their cheating mom's side, and now they're back because I'm doing well financially. Hey everyone. Before we dive into today's story, I just want to ask you for a quick favor. We've noticed the channel's been losing a bit of momentum lately, and honestly, hitting that subscribe button is one of the best ways you can support us. It takes a second, it's completely free, and it helps us keep bringing you great content. Your support really does mean everything to us. Let's keep growing this channel together. I truly appreciate it. Alright, let's get into it. Hey everyone. I've been carrying this around for about 8 years now, and I feel like it's finally time to let it out. I'm going to use fake names to keep things anonymous. I was married to my wife, Vanessa, for 23 years. At the time, I was 51 and she was 48. We have 2 kids, Tyler, 27, and Brooke, 25, both already out of the house and living their own lives. From the outside looking in, we probably seemed like one of those couples who had everything figured out. But behind closed doors, things were a lot different. Before we had Tyler and Brooke, Vanessa worked as an office manager at a small company. She genuinely loved her job and was really good at it, too. But when Tyler was born, she made the decision to leave her career and stay home to raise the kids. Back then, it felt like the right move for our family. I was working full-time as an IT support manager, and we agreed we'd rely on my income while Vanessa focused on raising the kids. I respected her choice, and I believed we were building something together as a team. And for a while, it actually worked. Vanessa handled most of the parenting, school drop-offs, homework, all of it. I made sure to tell her how much I appreciated everything she did, even though I couldn't always be around to help as much as I wanted. But as the kids got older, money started getting tight. Raising 2 kids on a single income wasn't easy. Every unexpected expense, car repairs, school trips, even buying supplies for the new school year, felt like a huge burden. I started picking up extra hours whenever I could, working late nights and weekends just to keep us afloat. I hated it. There were plenty of days where I left the house before the kids even woke up and didn't get back until they were already asleep. Vanessa would point out how little time I spent with them, and honestly, she wasn't wrong. But what choice did I have? We needed the money. Still, despite my efforts, she grew more and more resentful over time. I think part of her felt stuck. She had given up her career for the family, and now that Tyler and Brooke were older, she didn't really have anything to focus on anymore. She'd make comments about how other families seemed to have everything figured out while we were still barely getting by. Those comments hit hard. I already felt like I was falling short as a provider, and hearing that from her just made it worse. Then things started shifting in ways I couldn't ignore anymore. Vanessa became much more focused on her appearance, regular hair appointments, expensive clothes she didn't really need, and full makeup even on days she wasn't going anywhere special. She also began going out more often, saying she was meeting up with old friends or attending community events. At first, I didn't question it. I figured maybe she was just trying to rediscover herself, and I didn't want to be the guy who stood in her way. If she needed that space, I wanted to support her. But after a while, something about it started to feel off. She'd come home late, smelling like a perfume I'd never noticed before, and brush off my questions like it was nothing. Everything came to a head one night when she told me she had a book club meeting. It was 9 p.m., and I remember thinking, who has a book club that late? It just didn't sit right with me. For the first time in our entire marriage, I did something I never thought I would. I followed her. She left the house dressed nicer than usual, which immediately raised a red flag for me. I kept my distance as I followed her car across town until she pulled into the parking lot of a small coffee shop. I parked far enough away so she wouldn't spot me and just waited. About 10 minutes later, she walked inside, and I saw her sit down with a guy I didn't recognize. He looked to be in his mid-40s, maybe a little younger than us, and the way they were laughing and talking, it was like no one else existed. At first, I tried to convince myself it could be innocent. Maybe he was just an old friend or someone she knew from volunteering. But then they stood up, walked out holding hands, and got into his car together. I followed them again, this time to a hotel just a few blocks away. They didn't hesitate for a second. They walked straight inside together. I sat in my car for what felt like hours, trying to process what I had just witnessed. Part of me wanted to storm in there and confront them, but another part of me knew there was no point. I had already seen everything I needed to see. When I got home, I packed a bag and left a note on the kitchen counter that simply said, I know what you're doing. Don't even try to lie. After that, I drove to a friend's place and spent the night on their couch. The next morning, I called a divorce lawyer. When I finally confronted Vanessa, she didn't even bother denying it. She just sat there, completely calm, like she had been expecting this moment. When I told her everything I saw, the coffee shop, the hotel, she just nodded and said, "Well, I guess there's no point in lying now, is there?" She admitted she'd been seeing Derek for almost a year. This wasn't just some random fling. According to her, Derek was wealthy. He owned multiple businesses, lived in a massive house across town, and, in her words, understood her in ways I never could. She didn't even try to soften it. I wasn't happy, she told me. Derek makes me feel appreciated. There were no tears, no apologies, nothing. It felt like she had been waiting for this moment so she could finally move on. She laid out her reasoning like she was explaining a business decision. She said she felt lonely, that we had grown apart, that she missed feeling wanted. Then she hit me with, "You've been so focused on work for years, I didn't think you even noticed me anymore." Like that somehow justified everything she had been doing behind my back. I just stood there, letting her talk, but inside I was boiling. She had thrown away 23 years of marriage for a guy with more money, and she didn't even pretend to regret it. The only moment she hesitated was when I said, "I'm filing for divorce." "You're really sure about that?" she asked, tilting her head like she couldn't believe I'd actually go through with it. "I'm done," I told her. "You made your choice, and now I'm making mine." She didn't argue. She just said, "All right, maybe this is for the best." It was cold, calculated, like this had all been part of some plan. Filing for divorce turned out to be easier than I expected. Looking back, I think I had already checked out of the marriage mentally. So once I had a clear reason to walk away, I didn't hesitate. The hardest part wasn't leaving Vanessa. It was knowing I had to tell Tyler and Brooke. They were adults, sure, but this wasn't something I could just brush off. I knew it was going to hit them hard. What I didn't expect was how little support I'd get from the two people I thought would stand by me no matter what. I decided to talk to them one-on-one. I started with Tyler, thinking he'd be the more rational one. We met up at a diner he liked, the kind of place that serves greasy burgers and coffee that tastes like motor oil. He was already there when I arrived, sitting in the booth scrolling through his phone. I sat down, made a bit of small talk, and then just got straight to it. "I'm divorcing your mom," I told him. Tyler's expression went blank for a moment. Then he set his phone down and asked, "Why?" "She's been having an affair," I said, keeping my voice steady. I didn't want it to sound like I was looking for sympathy. I saw her with the guy, and she admitted everything when I confronted her. I honestly thought Tyler would understand. I mean, cheating is cheating, right? But instead, he leaned back in his seat and let out a long sigh, like I'd just told him his favorite team got knocked out of the playoffs. "Dad, come on," he said. "Are you sure you're not overreacting? Maybe you two just need counseling or something." Blowing it out of proportion? I repeated, honestly not believing what I was hearing. "She's been seeing another guy for almost a year. That's not some misunderstanding. It's over." Tyler still didn't seem convinced. "Yeah, but Mom's been a stay-at-home mom for years," he said. "Don't you think maybe she felt, I don't know, stuck? Lonely? You've been working all the time, and maybe she just needed. She needed to cheat on me?" I cut in, sharper than I meant to. If she felt stuck or lonely, she could have talked to me. She didn't. She chose to go behind my back instead. Tyler just shrugged like it wasn't that big of a deal. "I'm just saying, maybe you shouldn't rush into divorce. You've been married for 23 years. That's got to count for something, right?" I sat there, completely stunned. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Tyler kept going, talking about how divorce would complicate everything and how I needed to think about what it would do to the family. But not once did he say Vanessa was wrong. Not once did he even try to understand where I was coming from. By the time I walked out of that diner, it was obvious Tyler wasn't on my side. I told myself maybe Brooke would be different. Turns out, I was wrong about that too. When I sat down with Brooke and explained everything, her reaction was even colder. We met up at a park near her apartment, and I walked her through the whole situation step by step. She didn't even blink. "Okay," she said once I finished. "So what are you going to do?" "I've already filed for divorce," I told her. She crossed her arms and frowned. "Don't you think that's a bit extreme? I mean, yeah, Mom messed up, but are you really just going to give up on your marriage like that?" "She didn't mess up, Brooke. She made a decision," I said, trying to keep my frustration in check. Forgetting an anniversary, that's a mistake. Saying something hurtful in an argument, that's a mistake. This is something completely different. Brooke shook her head. You don't understand. Mom gave up everything for us. Her career, her independence. She put her whole life on hold to raise me and Tyler while you worked. So that gives her the right to cheat on me? I cut in again. Why does everyone keep acting like this is somehow my fault? I'm not saying it's your fault, Brooke shot back. I'm just saying it's not that simple. People aren't perfect, Dad. Mom made a mistake, but that doesn't mean you should throw away 23 years of marriage. It felt like I was talking to a brick wall. No matter what I said, she kept circling back to how much Vanessa had sacrificed and how I needed to look at the bigger picture. When I finally told her the decision wasn't up for discussion, she got defensive. Well, if you're going through with this, don't expect me to pick a side, she said. I'm not asking you to pick sides, I replied. Even though, deep down, I was starting to realize she already had. By the time that conversation ended, I was drained. Tyler and Brooke weren't just unsupportive. They were completely dismissive of everything I'd gone through. It felt like they cared more about Vanessa's feelings than mine. Like her betrayal somehow made sense because she'd been lonely or had sacrificed too much. And the worst part? Vanessa didn't seem to care at all. Over the next few weeks, things only got worse. Tyler and Brooke started pulling away from me. They used to call or text every now and then, but now I was lucky if I heard from them once a month. And when I did reach out, the conversations felt forced, short, awkward, like they just wanted to get it over with. I could tell they were spending more time with Vanessa and Derek. I'd see pictures pop up on Facebook, family dinners, birthdays, holidays, and I wasn't in a single one of them. They didn't come out and say it, but the message was loud and clear. I wasn't part of their circle anymore. The final blow came a few months after the divorce was finalized. Out of nowhere, Brooke called me to share some news. She was engaged. For a split second, I felt like I mattered again, like I was still part of her life. My little girl was getting married, and she actually thought to call me. I congratulated her, my voice cracking just a bit as I told her how proud and happy I was. But when I asked about the wedding, there was a pause. And in that tiny moment of silence, I knew something wasn't right. Well, Mom and Derek are going to be there, she said quietly. And Derek's going to walk me down the aisle. Like that was supposed to explain everything. I frowned, confused. Okay, and so, it might be awkward if you came, she said, barely above a whisper. I froze. Awkward? Awkward for who? I wanted to scream. My own daughter was telling me, straight up, that I wasn't welcome at her wedding because it might make Vanessa and Derek uncomfortable. The same guy Vanessa cheated on me with, the one who helped destroy our family. He had a place at the wedding. He was going to walk her down the aisle. And I wasn't even invited. You're serious? I asked, my throat tightening. It's just, you know how things are, she said, clearly uncomfortable, but not sorry. It'll just be easier this way. Easier? For who? Because it sure as hell wasn't easier for me. I sat there gripping my phone, trying to hold myself together. All right, I said finally, because honestly, what else could I say? And just like that, I wasn't invited to my own daughter's wedding. I stayed there for a while after the call ended, still holding the phone, trying to process it. My chest felt heavy, like someone had punched a hole straight through me and left nothing but emptiness behind. And just when I thought it couldn't get worse, Tyler followed the same path a few months later. His reasoning was almost word for word the same. Mom and Derek will be there. You won't feel comfortable if you come. Hearing that from him felt like a knife twisting in my chest. Tyler had always been the one I thought I could reach, the one who would eventually understand. But no, he'd made his choice too. That's when it really hit me. I hadn't just lost my wife. I'd lost my kids too. Vanessa didn't just cheat on me and move on with some rich guy. She managed to pull Tyler and Brooke over to her side and shut me out completely. It felt like she'd won. Like she'd taken everything from me and left me standing alone in the wreckage of a life I'd spent decades building. But I couldn't just let it go. I kept trying. I'd text Tyler and Brooke. Leave voicemails. Just checking in, I'd say. Hope you're doing all right. Sometimes I'd get a short reply, 1 or 2 words, polite but distant. Most of the time, nothing. About 9 months after the divorce, there was one night where the loneliness really hit me. The house felt way too quiet, and I realized I hadn't talked to anyone outside of work in days. On impulse, I called Tyler. When he picked up, I could hear a TV playing faintly in the background. Hey, Tyler, I said, trying to sound upbeat. I was thinking, why don't you and your fiancé come over for dinner sometime this week? It's been a while. I'd really like to catch up. There was a long pause on his end. Then he sighed. I'd like to, Dad, but we're really busy right now. Wedding planning, you know? Maybe some other time. I swallowed the lump in my throat and forced a smile he couldn't see. Yeah, I get it. Another time. Yeah, for sure, he said. I'll call you when things calm down. He never did. That was the exact moment it really hit me. I wasn't a priority in their lives anymore. I was just someone they'd remember when it was convenient. The little bit of hope I'd been holding on to started slipping away, piece by piece. I kept telling myself this was for the best, that staying in a marriage where I wasn't respected would have been even worse. But there was always that quiet voice in the back of my mind, nagging at me. Did I make the wrong call? Should I have fought harder? Should I have just swallowed my pride and stayed for the sake of the family? I never got those answers. Life just kept moving, and it felt like it moved on without me. For the next 8 years, I kept my head down and buried myself in work. And honestly, it wasn't because I loved what I did. It was about getting through the day. I was 51 years old, starting from scratch, and I needed something, anything, to keep me going. Work became that thing. My job in IT wasn't exciting, but it paid the bills and kept my mind occupied. Most days, I'd lose myself in fixing network issues or helping coworkers with tech problems. It didn't take much emotional energy, which was exactly what I needed back then. Then Gavin showed up. He was one of those guys who always seemed to be thinking 10 steps ahead, always throwing out ideas in the break room like he was pitching on Shark Tank. One day, he pulled me aside and said, "You ever think about going out on your own? Starting something from scratch?" At first, I just laughed. "Gavin, I'm not exactly the risk-taking type," I told him. But he didn't let it go. His idea was to start a tech consulting business focused on cybersecurity. He said the demand was growing fast, and that if we played it right, we could really make something of it. The more he explained it, the more it started to click. I had the technical skills, and he had the business mindset. After weeks of late-night talks over greasy takeout, I finally said yes. What do I really have to lose? I told him. Those first couple of years, they were rough. We worked insane hours, holding down our regular jobs while trying to build the business on the side. There were nights I'd fall asleep at my desk from exhaustion. We ran into problem after problem, clients backing out, money getting tight, stress piling up like I'd never experienced before. But we stuck with it. Little by little, things started to come together. We landed some solid contracts, built a reputation for actually delivering results, and before long, the business really took off. By the time I turned 58, I was doing better than I ever had before. I wasn't rich or anything, but for the first time in my life, I was comfortable. I moved out of that depressing apartment and into a modest, cozy house with a yard, and I was proud of it. I even managed to build up some savings, which I honestly never thought I'd have after the divorce wiped me out. For the first time in years, I felt like I had control over my life again. I wasn't just getting by anymore. I was actually doing well. I mostly kept to myself, focusing on work and keeping my personal life simple. Eventually, I started dating again, and that's when I met Natalie. She was a widow. Her husband had passed away in a car accident a couple of years earlier, and we connected almost instantly. She was incredible. About a year later, we got married. Not long after that, we had a beautiful baby girl, and we named her Chloe. Life was quiet, steady, and honestly, I liked it that way. Then, out of nowhere, Tyler and Brooke showed up at my door. It was a Saturday afternoon, and I was out mowing the lawn when I saw a car pull into my driveway. At first, I thought I was imagining things. I hadn't seen either of them in years, and now here they were, stepping out of the car like nothing had ever happened. I shut off the mower and walked over, unsure of what to expect. "Dad," Brooke called out, smiling like we'd just talked the day before. Tyler was right behind her, holding a toddler, his kid, I assumed. For a split second, I felt a spark of hope. Maybe they were here to reconnect. Maybe this was finally the moment we started fixing things. "It's been way too long," Brooke said, giving me a quick hug. "Yeah, it really has," I replied, still trying to wrap my head around it. We stood there in this awkward silence for a few seconds before Tyler cleared his throat. "Mind if we come inside?" he asked. "Of course," I said, stepping aside. They walked in like they belonged there, looking around, commenting on the house. How nice it was, how far I'd come. At the time, I didn't think much of it. I was too caught up in seeing them again. We sat down in the living room, and I couldn't help but notice how overly friendly they were being. Tyler asked about my work. Brooke complimented the house, and both of them kept slipping in little comments about how much they'd missed me. Then, about 20 minutes into the small talk, the real reason they were there finally came out. "Dad," Tyler said, leaning forward, "we need to ask you something." "Sure," I said, still not seeing where this was going. He glanced over at Brooke. She gave him a small nod, and then he said it. "We could really use your help. Financially." I just stared at them, waiting for more. Brooke jumped in quickly. "It's not exactly for us, it's for the kids. Things have been really tough lately." Turns out, Derek's landscaping business had crashed, and both Tyler and Brooke had been working for him. Now that the money had dried up, they were struggling to get by. "So what exactly are you asking?" I said, my tone coming out sharper than I meant. "Well," Brooke said carefully, "we were hoping you could help us out a little, just until we get back on our feet." That small flicker of hope I'd felt earlier? Gone. They didn't come because they missed me. They didn't come to fix things. They came because they heard I was doing well, and they wanted a piece of it. "I'll think about it," I said, keeping my expression neutral. They didn't stay much longer after that. They thanked me like I'd already agreed to help and then left. The second the door closed behind them, I sat down and blocked both of their numbers. 8 years of silence. And this is what brought them back. It wasn't about family. It wasn't about healing. It was about money. For years, I'd imagined a moment where they'd come back into my life for the right reasons, where we'd sit down, talk honestly, and maybe rebuild what we'd lost. But now I understood that moment was never coming. I thought that was the end of it. I was wrong. They weren't finished yet. About a week later, they showed up at my office. No warning, no appointment. I was in the middle of a meeting with a client when my assistant knocked on the door. There are 2 people in the lobby asking for you," she said. "They say it's important." "They don't have an appointment?" I asked, already irritated. "No. Tell them to leave their names." "I'll get back to them," I said. She hesitated. "They're saying they're your kids." My stomach dropped. Of course it was Tyler and Brooke. I told her to have them wait, figuring I'd deal with it after the meeting. But apparently, waiting wasn't something they were interested in. Not even 5 minutes later, I heard voices out in the hallway. They'd pushed right past my assistant and walked straight into the conference room, with their kids in tow. "Dad, we need to talk," Tyler said, completely ignoring the fact that I was sitting at a conference table with 2 clients and my business partner. I stood up slowly, doing my best to stay calm. "I'm in the middle of something right now," I told them. "This can't wait," Brooke said, stepping right up to the head of the table like she owned the room. I glanced over at Gavin, who looked just as confused as I felt, then turned back to them. "Fine. Go wait in my office. I'll come in when I'm done." Tyler looked like he was about to push back, but Brooke grabbed his arm and pulled him out, muttering something under her breath as they left. I apologized to the clients, wrapped things up as quickly as I could, and headed to my office, already knowing this wasn't going to be good. When I walked in, Tyler was pacing back and forth, and Brooke was sitting on the couch, trying to calm a fussy toddler in her arms. Neither of them looked happy. "You've got some nerve," Tyler snapped the second the door shut behind me. I raised an eyebrow. "Excuse me. Blocking us? Ignoring our calls?" He shot back. "We're your family, Dad. You don't just shut us out like that." I leaned against my desk and crossed my arms. "That's funny, because that's exactly what you did to me for 8 years. Or did you conveniently forget that?" Brooke let out a sigh, clearly trying to smooth things over. "Look, we get it, all right? We messed up, but we're trying to fix things now. That's why we're here." "No," I said flatly. "You're here because I didn't hand you money. It's not about the money." Tyler shot back, his voice getting louder. "It's about the kids. They deserve to know their grandfather." I looked over at the toddler in Brooke's arms. I didn't even know his name. They kept me out of their lives for years, and now I was supposed to just step in and play the loving grandpa. "I'm meeting them for the first time today," I said, keeping my tone steady. "You shut me out for years, and now you're dragging them here to guilt me into helping you? That's low, even for you." Tyler's face turned red. "You're unbelievable. Do you even hear yourself? You're punishing us for one mistake, and the only people you're hurting are those kids. You mean the same kids you didn't let me meet for 8 years?" I fired back. The toddler started crying, probably picking up on the tension, and Brooke immediately stood up to calm him. Can we just take a breath for a second? She said, her voice tight. But Tyler wasn't calming down. He was only getting more worked up. You're acting like some bitter old man, he snapped. Do you even care about anyone besides yourself? That was it. I was done. I stood up straight and pointed at the door. Get out. Right now. Tyler looked like he wanted to keep arguing, but Brooke grabbed his arm again. Let's go, she said through clenched teeth, her face pale. They turned and walked out, but just before leaving, Tyler stopped and looked back at me. You're going to regret this, he said quietly. When you're old and alone, don't come crying to us. Then the door slammed behind them. I stood there for a moment, shaking with anger. For a long time, I'd held on to this small hope that maybe, deep down, they still cared about me. But in that moment, I saw the truth clearly. They didn't care about fixing anything between us. They only cared about what I could give them. I tried to get back to work that day, but I couldn't focus. My mind kept replaying what happened in my office. The way they barged in, the way they acted like I owed them something. It was almost unbelievable. A few days later, they took things even further. This time, it was an email. The subject line read, "Let's start fresh." I opened it out of curiosity more than anything. It was long, way longer than it needed to be. A drawn-out apology. They admitted they'd made mistakes, said they regretted shutting me out, and claimed they wanted to rebuild our relationship. But buried right in the middle of all that was the real reason they reached out. We've been working on a new business idea, it said. It would mean a lot to us if you could invest. We're not asking for a handout, just some help to get started. I didn't even finish reading. I shut the laptop hard and just sat there staring at the wall, trying to keep my temper under control. Nothing had changed. They didn't want a relationship. They didn't want me. They wanted my money. I didn't reply. This time, I didn't even pretend to think about it. I was done. After everything, the constant pressure, the manipulation, I made the decision to cut them off completely. It was obvious Tyler and Brooke had no real interest in fixing anything. They only cared about what I could give them. So I blocked their numbers again, removed them from every social media account, and even changed my email address. I wasn't leaving any door open for them to use me again. At first, I felt a little guilty. Cutting off your own kids, that's not something you do lightly. But then I thought about it, about the last 8 years. They had no problem keeping me out of their lives. Now, they could stay out of mine. It wasn't easy, though. There were moments where I questioned myself. What kind of father does this? But every time I started to doubt, I remembered how they treated me. Not just recently, but for years. The birthdays they ignored. The weddings I wasn't invited to. The way they only showed up when they needed something. They didn't want a father. They wanted a resource. So I kept moving forward. I focused on my work, picked up a few new hobbies, even started traveling a bit. Eventually, I made peace with the fact that my old family wasn't coming back. And honestly, there was something freeing about finally letting go of something that was never going to happen. Then, one day, out of nowhere, Vanessa showed up. It was a Saturday morning. I had just finished my coffee when I heard a knock at the door. When I opened it, there she was. My ex-wife. But she didn't look like the same confident woman who walked out on me years ago. She looked older, tired, worn down. Her clothes were faded, and there was this desperation in her eyes I'd never seen before. "Vanessa," I said flatly. "What do you want?" She hesitated. "Can I come in?" "No," I said, crossing my arms. "Say what you need to say right here." She swallowed and looked down at the ground. "Derek's gone," she said quietly. I raised an eyebrow. "Gone as in?" "His business collapsed," she said. "And he left. Just disappeared." She nodded, her eyes filling with tears. "He drained everything we had and walked away. I've got nothing left. No one to turn to." I leaned against the doorframe, trying to take it all in. The guy she left me for, the one who was supposed to give her the life she always wanted, had taken everything from her and vanished. "What exactly do you want from me?" I asked, keeping my tone neutral. "I don't know," she admitted, her voice shaking. I needed to say I'm sorry. For everything. I was selfish. I was stupid. I see that now. I threw away the best thing I ever had for someone who didn't even care about me." Her words hung there in the air, but they didn't hit me the way they might have years ago. I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel vindicated. I just felt nothing. "I appreciate the apology," I said after a moment. "But it doesn't change anything. You made your choice, Vanessa. You walked away. Now you're dealing with the consequences. That's not my problem anymore." Tears streamed down her face, But I didn't budge. I'd spent too many years letting people walk all over me. I wasn't about to let her back in just because she was desperate. I'm not asking you to forgive me, she said softly. I just needed you to know how sorry I am. I nodded once, then stepped back inside. I hope you figure things out, Vanessa, I said. But this is where it ends. And with that, I closed the door. After she left, I sat down in my quiet house, feeling something I hadn't felt in a long time. Not satisfaction, not victory, closure. For the first time, I felt like I could finally let go of everything. The marriage, the betrayal, all of it. Over the past few months, I've been focusing on what actually matters now: my wife, my daughter, my work, my hobbies, my peace. I don't look back anymore. Cutting ties with Tyler and Brooke wasn't easy, but it was the right decision for me. And as for Vanessa, her apology didn't rewrite the past, but it gave me the final push I needed to move forward. My life didn't turn out the way I thought it would, but it's mine. And for the first time in a long time, that's enough.